Yeah, good morning everyone. There's no nice way to talk about legislation, be a bit dry, but we'll give it a go. I'll stick this fellow up. This is brown bullhead catfish, just because it's one of my favourite photos, and I flashed it in front of my 2.5-year-old daughter this morning and she cowed off and said, it's a yucky monster. But we talk about koi carp a lot, and this is also quite a common pest fish in our region, and where we've been operating the koi carp trap, we've found numbers in the thousands each year when we're trapping those, so just something to keep in mind. But so where's the Regional Council's role in all this? It all sort of starts with the Resource Management Act, and in particular the amendment that was made in 2003 that requires regional councils to protect natural heritage and manage regional biodiversity, including the threats, and it's that part that fits into here today. And there's also a public expectation that the Regional Council will manage pest species. And essentially we do this under the Biosecurity Act. It's been mentioned earlier, but in particular Section 14 gives us powers to monitor pests and pest agents and unwanted organisms, to see where they're present. We've got surveillance of pests, pest agents and unwanted organisms, and we also prepare proposals for and implement regional pest management plans. And I'll go on to talk about these regional pest management plans, which were formerly referred to as regional pest management strategies. There's been a slight tweak of that legislation since then. For the Waikato region, so these plans that the councils produce are specific to their region. We've just, the one that we currently have in place has just been sort of accepted by council this week. And this RPMP covers 68 plant pests and 35 pest animals in this region alone, of which 7 of those are pest fish. And the RPMP provides policy for a range of things, so advice, education and information, monitoring and enforcement, general surveillance, direct control. There's community initiatives, biological control and a small portion of research. So this essentially allows us to put ratepayer money into these different areas. The pest fish that we've covered in the RPMP, of course, are the brown bullhead catfish, koi carp, gambusia, wild goldfish. I don't quite know how it ended up being wild goldfish, because when does the pet goldfish being tipped into the river become a wild goldfish? Perch, tench and rudd, and they're all classified as environmental threats in the pest management plan. So the plan itself for each of these species that are within it, there's a description, there's a reason as to why it's, and a justification as to why it's in the plan, the council's long-term objective for that species, and the objective of the plan, which is in that 10-year time frame. And it also has a small piece on what will be measured / monitored. And it also has a section on the means of achievement. So we have plan rules, we have direct control, monitoring and surveillance, information and advice and management partnerships. So there's a general theme that runs through it. And it's a hideous thing. So this is the thing that falls out at the bottom of those 7 pest fish species. We have one of these for every species that's identified. So I've just highlighted a couple of examples of what it will look like. So for koi carp, so no person shall release koi carp, brown bullhead catfish, gambusia or wild goldfish into any water body within the Waikato region outside the known current range for the species concerned. Consideration will be given to the relevant licences sought under the Freshwater Fish Farming and Regulations of 1983. And then there will be a qualifying part that talks about what the offence will be and what a breach of those rules will incur for anyone involved. As Nicholas has just talked about, co-management legislation for the Waikato River passed in 2010. That's also a big part of our regional pest management plans now. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it doesn't just refer to the Waikato River, but the wider catchments as well. So that's a fairly substantial area within the region. And also there was co-management legislation passed for the Waipā River specifically in 2012 for Ngāti Maniapoto. And in the process of drawing up our regional pest management plans, we have to give particular regard to the vision and strategy when carrying out those functions under the Biosecurity Act. In terms of surveillance and ready response, the objective there is to prevent new plants and pests from becoming established or dispersing further within the region. The second policy of minimisation, minimise the risk introduced or dispersal of new species, and intervention. So where either new pests are detected or where those incursions are obviously moving outside the current gazetted range, then we're likely to act. Partnerships is also another important one. So Regional Council works in partnership with DOC, MPI, and particularly other neighbouring regional councils, especially where there's boundary issues, and sometimes regional pest management strategies for one region will identify pests that are not, that are also in another region, but the other region may not identify them. And a classic would be Auckland doesn't have woolly nightshade in its pest management strategy. Waikato does. So as soon as you drive over the Bombay Hills, you start seeing woolly nightshade everywhere. So there's neighbour rules as well. And of course that in the past, those regional pest management plans have been quite separate. It's been up to the individual regions to do them, but part of the rejig of the legislation was to try and get more of a national standard happening as well. Some of the issues and the challenges that we have. So getting internal, and I say this relative to pest fish for this particular workshop, getting support for pest fish within our own organisation can sometimes be problematic if it's not the flavour of the day. And an example of that would be, for instance, we would annually spend about $5 million on possum control, and our budget for pest fish would be $50,000 for a year. So there's a big difference in those allocations of funding. And of course, the more you look into this sort of stuff and the more you listen to the other organisations in here this morning, just trying to get all those organisations to work together and for that legislation not to be conflicting within the individual organisations is also a challenge. So funding and just those cross-boundary issues are probably the biggest challenges that we have.